All right, so what I'm being told to do in the directions is to remove these posts right here. The two posts on the outside of the pad right there. So I'm gonna see if, and you can also see, you know, as I was messing with this, and I did put a little tension on there, this little piece just fell right off. So it's a good thing we didn't keep rolling with it, because I'd have been bouncing around in there with the cams and lobes. All right. So I want to break this loose, take these little two posts off right here. As you can see, these are put on with some Loctite or thread sealer. So they'll probably give you a little bit of a fight as you try to get them out, but just go slow, take it easy, and back it out. So one down. All right, now it's time to get the pad chain and the chain off. Got a new chain, new pads ready to roll. Thanks to my guy, Emmanuel at the 944 store. Always love using him. I always get these cool stickers. All right, here's what I'm trying to do. This is the biggest C-clamp I've got, and I'm hoping I don't have to go to the store and get a bigger one, because I can't fit over the chain on each side. But what I can do is get on top of the chain right there, and there's a little lip down here that I'm able to grab just a little bit. I want to try to crank this down and depress this tensioner. See if this gives me enough control to do that. Take some notes real quick. As you can see, we've got the orientation here. So we've got this top mark, that little notch right there, lined up straight. And we got this top mark over here, lined up straight as well. So once you get this out of the car, it's, you know, it might tweak a little bit, but in the car, these were straight up and down. And you can kind of see it corresponds with that link. And then this one corresponds with that link. It's not marked. And my new chain is not marked either, so I don't have a different color chain on here, but we're gonna use the 7 chain spacing, you know, from sprocket to sprocket, or 5 in between. So we'll count, recount, assess our pictures and everything, but here's another good opportunity to get an orientation picture of what the lobes look like as they came out of the car. All right, so I'm gonna try to crank this down. Hopefully I can get the tensioner loose and I can get these off without much trouble. All right, got it all apart. So you can see, this was a good thing that we did this. This is the bottom one. And as I was sliding it off right here, it just kind of broke in half. So it's pretty, it was just worn out, and you can see the grooves are pretty deep. This chain was, or this pad was just done. So good thing we changing it out. This was the piece that was already broken, and as soon as there was slack on the chain, it just fell right out. So that was a good catch. Here's the brand new. So we got a nice new pad. Look at that, that is nice. And then this is the bottom pad. It's new. It's not the tan color, but I don't know. They're exactly the same. I'm putting the nice new tan one on top. And this is also new, and it's just darker. So I don't know if it's supposed to be that way or if it just is that way. But yeah, actually ended up, the C-clamp worked. So I ended up doing it the other way, where this part ended up being on top and this part ended up being on this lip on the bottom. It just gave me a little bit of grip, and just squish it together and then, you know, wiggle it out. So I was actually able to slide the whole tensioner. So I got the chain slacked and just kind of slid it off a little bit. And then it was easy to get the lobes out and the tensioner out. All right, so to put them back, we're going to slide these into place, like on the top. So there you go, that one's already sliding on. And we're gonna slide one in on the bottom. And I'm gonna look and see, it might be that the holes on the bottom need to be the other way. So I'm gonna go back to that picture I already took and see how this needs to look. Okay, so to get these on, you can see that one side has a stopper on it. So that side's stopped and one side's open. So the side where the posts were, you know, we took the post out, we slide it on, and it goes on like that. And then the stopper is on this side for the top, so the posts hold it in. And then on this side, we got to take these posts off, looks like, because it needs to slide on that way. And it looks like the stopper will be on this side, and then the posts are going to hold that one in place. All right, so I need to get these posts off. All right, like I said, those are Loctited on there, and so when it's free floating like this, it's hard to get off. So this was my fix, just putting a wrench, give me a little leverage, and they broke loose pretty easy. So now I'm just gonna back them out. Okay, we are back on. So we are slid into place. This looks right. I definitely know this top one, the holes are pointed that way, and I believe the bottom one looks like they gotta be pointing backwards. All right, so I got my posts back on. They are Loctited and torqued down to 7 foot-pounds or 84 inch-pounds. So this is an inch-pound torque, so add 12 to your pound and get 84 or 7 foot. All right, so with that in place, so now, and we should have everything timed right here. As you can see, I put a red mark, 7 links apart. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're lined up with the notch, which is also red now to make me feel better and to help it show up on the camera better. Lobes look like they're pointed the right direction. So now we need to compress this. See if I can find a way to lock it in place. And then we're going to try to slide it back in and then unlock it and release it. All right, I'll let you know what happens. All right, I've had a couple failed designs of this, but I think this one will work. I took a thick piece of wire, basically a marshmallow toaster fire thing. Maybe a thick clothes hanger could work for you, and have angled it so that it'll fit in the hole and then clip back there. So let's see if I can show you what I'm talking about. So that part fits there, and then this part, with a little help, will fit in that hole right there. And I'm going to make it another one for the other side, and we'll see if they will work. All right, this is what I like to call custom with a K. All right, so problem I had with another design was when I was trying to slide it on, it kind of went this way and that way into the holes, you know, on opposite sides, interfered with the teeth sliding into place. So what I've landed on now is I'm going to try to clip them from the back. So using one of the holes and holding it through the gap in the back right there. I'm about to let the pressure off. If it holds, then this will definitely work. If it doesn't, then you will never see this video. Well, what do you know? It actually worked. So these things held. As you can tell, they're pretty thick piece of wire, so it held tension pretty well. I was able to set the camshafts on a box like this, so that you know, we have flexibility on the bottom with the chain and on the top. Slid the bottom in first into place, put the top in. You know, chain's really loose right now. It's still compressed, and so now I'm going to double check my timing. So I still got my marks. You know, they're not perfect, but they are lined up on that chain. So I got the chain mark there and there, and it looks like we're gonna be good. So lobes are still oriented right. So next I'm gonna compress the overall chain, you know, top and bottom, enough to get my locks out. And then I'm gonna slowly relieve the pressure so that it all tensions up. And then it should be ready to go back in. All right, let's see how it goes. All right. Once I got the, you know, everything in place and the pad, chain is on the pad, top and bottom. Looks like it's pretty centered. This pad does pivot a little bit. I'm guessing that's by design. Hope so anyway. But the chain's on there Our marks are still lined up, so there we go, still got 7 links and 5 in between, and it's all tension, so that's good and tight right there. I can't really do much with that. And right now the sprockets are touching the tensioner. It was that way when I took it out as well, but once we get it all in and pressed down, I'm sure those will separate like they're supposed to. They'll sit in their seats like they're supposed to, and it'll probably compress this a little bit as well. All right, so I'm gonna double check, probably send some pictures to a couple guys to make sure that they agree that I'm good, and we'll put it back in. All right, so if you have a new hall sensor to put in, this will be a good time to do it. In hindsight, I could have just waited till I got this off to take the hall sensor off, but oh well, you live and learn. This piece right here fits in the groove on that housing piece, so fix that real quick. All right, now that that's in the groove and fit inside this little bracket housing, can put it back, match the pin right there on that side, and then 2 bolts, and it should be good to go for when we put it back in. Nope, I think it's one way only. This is the way, yeah, so it goes on that way. Then when we put it back in the car, of course the plug will plug in right there. All sensors in. All right, so we're getting ready to put the cams back in. And to do so, we're gonna need a special tool that helps get pressure on the cams and gets them in their saddles so that we can torque them down. And it's this official tool that came from Porsche, as you can tell. Some assembly required, made in America, not in Germany. Porsche, official tool. All right, so what I did with the help of some friends and Brandon Sherry, shout out to you, showed me some pictures of what he did, and these are non-foulers, spark plug non-foulers, and of course I couldn't find a threaded rod that would actually thread into this thing, so JB Weld to the rescue with a bolt, and it's welded on the inside, and just a hole in a 2x4 with a washer on top and a bolt to crank it down. All right, let me take you through what I'm doing so far. So I've got my Porsche official tools down and use them to crank the camshafts down into place. Then I put in the carriers for 2, 4, 6, and 8. And I just kind of got them pushed down to where they were touching where the carriers were touching, the surface face right there. And then went back through and just kind of got each one snugged up, not putting much pressure on it at all because we're not torquing very hard. Came back with my torque wrench. So here's 15 pounds on the torque wrench, and I'll try to carry you along for the last one here. So I've torqued all the other ones, and this one, this is dicey doing it like I'm doing it to show you, but there we go. Click, 15 pounds. All right, so now that we got these actually torqued down, we should have pressure evenly on this thing, and making sure, yeah, you can see there, well, I don't know if you can see with this angle, but the teeth are close, but they're not touching the tensioner anymore. So we're clear there. So next, I think I'm gonna put this end cap on, and I think we use Loctite for the mating surface. I'll read the instructions again, but we'll put it on and torque it down. We'll take these saddles off, and then we'll put on the carriers for 1, 3, whatever that is, 5 and 7. All right, so let me start working on this piece here. All right, according to the instructions, next we're gonna back these out and we're gonna replace the carriers for these, and then we'll do this end piece right here. All right, so we're back in, all in, torque down 15 pounds, put this piece back on with the 4 bolts. And the instructions said to put a thin film of Loctite on the mating surfaces for this, so I put a thin one, and hopefully, I mean, I couldn't tell if it had any of that on there when I took it off, but it said put it on, so I put some on, and hopefully if I ever take this off again, it's not on there super good. So don't use the heavy duty stuff, I would say. Probably, I used the blue Loctite on this. Okay, so I think next step, I don't know. Let's see what the next step is. All right, put your check valve back in, push it in, put a new O-ring in as well. Next, we're gonna put our mounting bolts back on for the tensioner. And these are gonna be torqued 7 pounds. All right, got some washers for the inlet pipe down below. So one on top, one on bottom of the pipe with the bolt going through. Be careful putting your one on the bottom because obviously if you drop it in there, it's be really, really hard to fish it out. And the crush washers, I've got copper ones. They are not magnetic. If you're using aluminum, same. But it's pretty easy. You just kind of work the pipe back in there. Loosely put those in and loosely set the top, and then torque them all down to 7 foot-pounds. So 7 foot-pounds across the board on the tensioner pipe, and good to go there. All right, next we'll put in this woodruff key. Let's put it in and then tap it in, and I did clean it up with sandpaper. All right, so with woodruff key in, I was able to slide this back on and, you know, get everything back in, and we are notched in right on. So there we go, dead center timed. Our chains also look like they are timed what they're supposed to be still, which is great. So notch right lines up with the red. A thing of note is right here, one thing I had when I did this was there was a little bit of slack in this cam, and I was off almost a tooth. And so I actually cranked it just a little bit on this shaft, which raised that tensioner. So the tensioner was not at its full height, and that turned it a little, which then put me dead center. And so that's as far up as it goes now. I can't move it, but if I do push this back, you can see it does go down a little and back up, and that's where it stops right there. So that's the top of the tensioner's thing, and that was why I was off. So I'll probably run that through the community just to make sure all is well there. But the tensioner, you know, may not be fully up. I don't have the pipe in, it's not pressurized, stuff like that. So maybe that's the reason. But anyway, we put the main gear back on, and so next we need to start putting things back together. So I'm probably going to torque this bolt down. All right, correcting myself. These are 4 foot-pounds, and this is 29. So the center bolt's going to be 29. And these are just, you know, they're not on very tight, but they're just slightly snug. All right, center bolt has been torqued down to 29, and I used, you know, a big wrench to counterweight that washer right there. So I just held on to that, and that it shouldn't move that stuff, but I'm just not risking it. So hold it, hit 29 pounds on there, and that is secure. All right, to keep everything nice and red, mark my timing here. So there's our mark, cam housing mark, and we have our teeth lined up, the notch with the chain as well. So we are all timed up. So we should be good to go. All right, I managed to get the belt back on. Yay, everything's lined up. And what I did is actually I kept this lever in here, but I pulled this pulley off and also pulled the adjuster pulley down here off, so I'm gonna have to redo that one. I don't think that one gained me anything, so I should have left that one on there. But this one did help give me just enough slack to start feeding it around and get it on the teeth. So we're on the teeth there. We're on the tensioner pulleys on as well. So I think we're gonna be good here. All right, so I think next we need to start thinking about our tensioner. All right, actually, I'm gonna put this on next, a little guard in. All right, so to get our tensioner locked in, we need to push this pin down and we need to lock it in with something. You can buy the special tool, or you could just find a little pin that you have lying around, maybe a drill bit, something that fits in the hole and you can lock it down. Also, there's a spot on the back. We don't want to put pressure on that from what I'm reading. So I found a socket that'll fit around the edge and we'll try to put pressure on that instead. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, you can see, it's a very slow process and it goes down very slowly. So torquing it by hand here, it's not taking a lot of pressure, but it is pretty tight. And then I wait, then I do a little bit more, and then I wait, and do a little bit more, and eventually it should line up in that hole and we'll lock it. All right, I just learned a helpful lesson for you. And then make sure you put the pin in the right side. I had it backwards. And try to put it on, and that wasn't happening. So here we go. That's the right orientation. Pins on this side, we should be good now. All right, that went in way easier than it came out. And I'm not gonna pull the pin yet. I'm gonna get the circlip in before I do, just in case I need to do some adjusting or you know, something without tension on that lever. There we go, circlip's back on. All right, I worked the cam belt back on. I started here, got my, you know, on the top piece here, and then worked it down, and then used the adjuster at the bottom to get slack to get it on. But a couple more things here is a little more red paint. So we've got our marking there and there, there and there, and we now got the marking there as well. So I'll adjust it a little bit with the adjuster to get the right tension, and then we'll crank everything over by hand. So I'm going to crank this down. I need to set this again because I took that off with a feeler gauge, and then we'll test it out. All right, so to tension the belt here, we got this this pulley right here. So going up like this tightens, loosening that way loosens. You can see the belt kind of going up and down like that. So we're going to put a little bit of tension on it, and we're going to try to go by feel with this. I don't have the gauge or the feeler, so I'm going to kind of get it where I think it's right from down here, and then I'm going to go up top and try to get it, see how it feels like from there. So this might take a couple, so I'm going to try to get it right from here as best I can, put a little tension on it so I can feel that. I tighten this just enough that it holds whatever I'm doing. Then I can, like, you know, set it and see how it feels. So I'm going to see how that feels up top. So I'll probably tighten it down real quick. Not going to torque it in. I'm just going to tighten it. And I'm probably going to go back and forth until I feel like I've got it right. And then we'll check all our timing marks again. All right, so using the twist method, you know, right now I'm a little too tight. So as I was beneath, I tightened it up too much, so I need to loosen it. I can bend it maybe that much right now. And what I want to do is be able to twist it, you know, past a 90, so vertical, past a little bit more. It's looser than you think, so this is too tight. So let me go back and try it again. All right, so I might still be a hair tight here. I'm definitely looser than I was, but I'm gonna keep it like that for now. What we're gonna do now is I'm gonna take my lock out. So I'm lined up here, I'm lined up down there, lined up here, and my chains, you see they are on their marks too. So what I'm gonna do next is remove the lock, and I'm gonna crank this over by hand a few times around, line it back up again. So we're probably gonna do 2 full rotations, line it back up again, and we're gonna check all our marks again. Make sure everything's still timed, make sure I'm not meeting, you know, any more resistance than I should on strokes. And then we'll probably test the tension again, see if it's close, set it to where I think it needs to be, and then we'll do the same thing again. We'll turn it over a few times by hand, check everything again, and just make sure that, you know, everything's lined up, belts are right. We're gonna make sure we feel really good before we lock it down or put it back together. So anyway, next step will be removing that lock. All right, so here we go. I got the lock off. Got my big boy on with a 24 millimeter bolt on the crank, on the center bolt. And I've already mudded it a little bit. As you can see, I'm already making my way around. My chains marks are moving. Everything's moving. Just want to bring it around 2 full cycles. See if it'll stay on there. There we go. You can tell when you're on a compression stroke and when you're not, because compression, you're going to be a little harder. All right, so keeps popping off. So I'm going to do this by hand, rotate it, and bring you back. All right, so I've now done 1 full rotation. So I'm lined up back here. I'm still seeing the one there. I'll crawl underneath and see if the one below is, but look at here. All right, because we've just done 1 rotation, now our markings are on the bottom. Even though our notches are up top again, the chain markings are on the bottom. So I'm gonna do another full rotation, and we should be back on our marks. All right, I'm gonna try to do this with one hand. You can see marks getting close. One of our chain markings are back on the map now. I'm on a compression stroke. There we go. Turn it around. All right, so that's 2 full rotations. And we are on our marks here. Not quite on our marks there, so let me revisit and see how many rotations it takes to get back on the mark. All right, well, I think it took me 7 rotations all the way around to get the markings back. So the chain is long, you know, and these are going to spin around full rotations quicker than the chain will. Could have been 8. I'm not entirely sure how confident I am in my counting, but I think it was 7 rotations. And we're on our mark. We are on our mark, and we are on our mark. Woohoo! All right, so I'm going to reference my video from earlier to see if this matches what I videoed before, but I think our tension's right now. So I did have it a little too tight, but once we did all the rotations, all the slack evened out, you know, so there'll be slack in some places. And so it evened out, and I think I'm on the money now. So I can turn it just past that 90 degree, or like right up and down. Got a good bit of play in it. We don't want it too loose. You also don't want it too tight. So if anything, it might actually could go a hair looser. But I kind of think I might roll with that. I'm going to look at that video and see. All right, so I think last step for me on these belts is this little piece right here. I took it off, probably didn't need to, but I did. And so this one needs to be set with a feeler gauge. So I'm going to go back underneath below. I'm going to do the same deal, tighten up a little bit, use our wrench, and use the feeler gauge to set the deflection of this off of the belt. I think it's at 0.5. So I'll get one real quick and show you how to do that. All right, yeah, so the idler pulley is right here, you can see, and it's telling us 0.5 millimeter is the gap we're setting on it. and we're measuring from the bottom right here. So we'll set our feeler gauge right there, set it down to touch, and then tighten it down. Then we'll pull the feeler gauge out, and we should have a 0.5 millimeter gap right there. Okay, here's the thickness gauge. You can see we got a 0.5 millimeter right there. So we'll use this one and get under the car. All right, so now, sorry, let me try to get you flat. I've got it set, tighten down pretty good, you know, hold it with your wrench. And I'll show you here. Should be able to slide my gauge out in between pretty easy. That's my 0.5. All right, next up is going to be torque everything down. So 33 foot-pounds for the idler pulley and for the belt tensioner as well. And I think that's generally the case for all of these. So I think all the pulleys and rollers are about 33 foot-pounds. One might be 29 if I remember right. I don't remember which one. But what you want to do, especially with the pulleys that are adjustable, is make sure you have your wrench so you're countering the movement. You don't want it to move while you're torquing it down. All right, next we're going to take these out, put the distributor cap back on with the spacers in the back. Distributor housing back on next, 3 bolts, 2 below, 1 up top. All right, next the distributor cap is back on. I'm going to hold off on doing the plugs until I get the cover on, and I'm going to go ahead and do spark plugs while I'm here. I got brand new ones to put in. All right, going with the NGK Iridiums, good high quality spark plug that was not cheap, but should run well and last a long time. I'm going to put them in the spark plug tool, use a little bar on the end, we'll stick them in and tighten them down good and snug. All right, my plugs are in and I no longer need my rags. So even if you don't end up taking your spark plugs out for this job, you technically don't have to. I would still stuff the rags because there's a lot of potential for stuff to fall down in there. And even with the plugs in, you don't want to have to go fishing stuff out from the tube. So the rags are good either way. Okay, had to use a lot of assembly lube all through the channel to get that gasket to stick and not fall out. I tried to go minimal and didn't work out, so went maximal instead. And you can see it's in there. You can see the green assembly lube on there. So I'll take a rag to that, clean it up as best I can. But it's in place. And next I'm going to put the grommet plugs in place and start putting our bolts in place. And then we'll get the torque spec and we'll torque it down. All right, all the little grommets are in. So next we need to put the bolts in. And like I said earlier, as soon as you take those out, lay them out in a pattern and take pictures, because you might have someone decide to help you out and accidentally mix all yours up. So fortunately I took picture and video and I can figure out which ones go where. All right, so here's the bolts, cam cover bolts. You got the bolt, you've got the cover. We're gonna put our washer on, in right here. And then that is going to go in the plug hole. All right, and we're just going to put them in and get them started. We're going to torque them down probably in a sequence and to a certain torque. I think it's 7 foot-pounds, but I'll verify before I actually do it. All right, I used the good old whiz tool to get them all started and down to where they're just kind of snug, you know, just hand tight. And now I'm going to go around to each one and do 7 foot-pounds. So I didn't read anywhere that you need to do a certain pattern, but I always do a star pattern if you're trying to get something even. So kind of here, 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 here. Might hit the middle, or might hit the middle first and then go there, 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 and kind of work your way out. So you can do you kind of pick your poison there, but 7 foot-pounds, so it's not very much. So get your little one out. If you have it, inch pounds, you know, that's the 84 inch pounds, 7 times 12. Check my math, and we should get it snug down. All right, with our cover back on and torqued to 7 foot-pounds, now we will put our fuel lines back on and get them snugged up. All right, fuel hoses are back hooked up together. I just went ahead and pushed my plugs back in, coils back in, and don't forget the clip right here. So put this clip back on as well. And now we can re-secure this, and we can plug all these back in here and put our coil wire back on as well. All right, this section moves pretty quick. So just affirming, fuel lines are on, coils are in. I've secured this back with the little tabs right here. It's a tab there and there. And I numbered mine when I started, so I just put them back in the order they came off. Coils on. So we're getting close to a test fire. Next thing I need to do is put the starter back in. All right, starter's back in place, bolts are in. And I didn't unwire anything, but if you did, then you need to get your wires back in where they go. And we're getting close. All right, we're about ready for a test fire. Before you do, look at everything, make sure nothing's in the way, like this. You don't need this banging around and breaking stuff. You definitely would. But I believe besides that, looks like we're all clear, so we'll hook the battery back up. Say a prayer, have an extra pair of undies on hand, and we'll give a crank, see what happens. I'm intentionally leaving the cover off for now because I want to see these belts in action. And so we'll run it for a little bit, and then we'll turn it off and check the belts, make sure that we're still in line with everything. All right, here we are in a moment of extreme anxiety, fear, but at some point you just gotta send it. So let's see what happens. It's running. We got a light on, not sure why. Anti-lock, not sure what that's about. All right, let's see how she's running. Running. Okay, so yeah, didn't want to run it long at all without the air filter on, and you know, we just did a lot of stuff that involved a lot of different parts coming apart. So I need to just double check everything, make sure we're not leaking fuel. You know, I had that warning light, so I'm going to double check my oil level, which should be fine, but maybe things have just been sitting for so long, I don't know. We're gonna retime this, so I'll get my crank bolt back on. What I'll do is just realign everything up again, make sure everything still lines up, make sure our tension is still good. Yep, still feels where I left it. All right, so speaking of, yeah, I completely forgot to hook up the hall sensor. Brand new hall sensor that we worked so hard to put on. I'll try to get this on off camera, but yeah, don't forget to plug that in. All right, so I found the rest of my old plug. It is still inside the plug on the motor, so I've started picking it out. So we picked that out, and then hopefully my new plug actually fits. Ta-da! Okay, a couple more things of note is I had to go back. I was leaking a little bit of fuel. I still am. I can see it dripping, so I've got to get that fit right. Oil light was on, so I added a little bit more oil. Could be I lost some doing this. The other ones, I mean, I've got some other lights on, but I don't have my accessory belts on right now, so I don't have voltage. There's a couple things that aren't there. So mainly, so I'm gonna make sure my timing is good, my belts are good. So next step's gonna be retiming, fixing that fuel leak, and getting these belts back on. And at that point, you know, we'll be good to go. Next, I put the bottom cover back on before we do the belts. All right, next, slip your belts back on and then tighten up with your turnbuckles, and then make sure you tighten these end pieces back down as well, and any mounting pieces that you may have loosened as you did this. So I've got mine, you know, they're good and tight. Try not to go over tight, but also don't want to get any squeak going either. So next I'll probably put the airbox on. I'll fire it up, make sure we're not squealing. And if your belts are squealing or acting up, then you might need to adjust your tension some more. All right, at this point, got the airbox back on and all snapped in. So all the snaps are in place, filters back in there as well. So next, I'm gonna get the cooling fans on. All good, no lights. Looks like we're good to go. All right, put the top cover back on. And pro tip, probably best to put that on before you put the belt on and before you put these on. Of course, I did a test run, so I had to pull the plugs out. And once the airbox is in the way, the belts are on, you can still do it, but man, it's so much easier when it's open. So you might want to go ahead and do that before you do your belts down there. All right, so like I said, this is a learning experience where you're watching me learn. I've decided the airbox needs to go on last because I keep putting it on and I keep taking it off to get the belt cover on easy. And when I went to put the fan back in, the box is hiding the bolts. So you could go by feel, but for 3 screws, just pull the box out of the way, or just don't put it in yet. Wait till the very end. And we'll put the screws in the top. So now our fans are bolted in up top and bolted in down below and plugged back in. So there we go. So I'm gonna get a couple zip ties to hold some stuff out of the way. All right, I did get one plastic connector to survive and pushed it back in, but might have to do some zip ties in a couple places for the others. All right, so now I'm gonna run it for a little bit. As you can see, everything's back together, no warning lights. And the lifters are a little noisy. That's pretty common when your car sits for a while. So I'm gonna let it get up to temperature. Just make sure everything's good, just sitting here. All right, I've been running probably 10 minutes. Lifter noise is gone. So I had a good, loud ticking at first. Probably a stuck lifter is what that is. It's running good and smooth at this point. Almost up to temperature. We're probably about halfway there. So waiting on my fans to kick in. I'm gonna make sure my fans work. All right, the fan has kicked on and cooled off. So now the last piece is just putting our bolts in and putting our decorative piece, our shield on. All right, so we've run up to temperature. The fans have kicked on and cooled back down again. Everything is purring along. It is running very smooth, smoother than it ever has. So good to have the oil off the plugs now, and everything seems to be running great. So we'll button up the underside and get her down for a test drive. All right, on the test drive. It's just down a little street next to the house. And everything is working. Of course, I need to shift gears, but there you go. I think we're good to go. All right, guys. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. If you can, hit subscribe. Follow me for some other content. So anytime I work on the car, I try to make a video of it because there's just not much out there for the 968. So hopefully your car, if you're following this procedure, has done like mine and has received it, accepted it, and is running great.